Bill Jimenez.
Good morning. Go ahead and file in the classes that are still coming. I appreciate that we're trying to still hold the regular school day while we have this great event. So thank you. I want to welcome first our students and our staff and some of our citizens here as we today have this opportunity to speak with our local government on a day when the national government is closed for business. Public education and local government is still working. So it's a tribute to Mr. Reese and Mr. Coonan and our student government and all our social studies classes for leading us today, that while the national government is closed for business, the local candidates are here, our public is here, and our citizens and our students and staff are still here working day to day, making sure that we're still taking care of business ourselves. So thank you for that. It's a topical story when the government is closed. We have both candidates for the city mayorship. They're here. They're willing to speak to students about your interest and your questions, and we're really excited for that. We've got a panel of student leaders here that will be asking some pointed and very well-researched questions, and we'll have a student moderator. A lot of work went into making this a professional event. We modeled it off the national debates. We're going to ask you to likewise respect everybody's opinion and everybody's opportunity to discuss these very interesting and important topics. So let's get down to business, and let me welcome our moderator, Teresa. I'll turn it over to her, and she'll give you some of the details. Let's have a great debate, and remember that at the end of the debate today, we will hold an election. So please listen to the questions and figure out where you stand and who will you support. So at the end of this meeting, we're going to take an election poll from this audience, and we're going to find out where we stand. Thank you for your patience, your cooperation, and your respect for our visitors.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the J.P. McCaskey student body and the Student Citizens in Action Project, I'm excited to welcome you to the first Lancaster City mayoral debate. My name is Teresa Desselton, and I'll be your moderator today. This debate features the two mayoral candidates, Mayor Rick Gray and Mr. Charles Smithgall. Mayor Gray has been Lancaster's mayor for the past 8 years and is seeking his third term in office. Mr. Smithgall was mayor of Lancaster from 1998 to 2006, and this would also be his third term in office. Now, today's debate will be in a town hall format. This means that the student panelists behind me will be asking the questions to either candidate. In order for everyone to hear the questions and answers, it's very important that the audience stays silent at all times. And the debate will start with opening statements. A coin flip just minutes ago determined that Mayor Gray will give the first opening statement. These will be 2 minutes long. This also means that Mr. Smithgall will then get the first question. Mr. Smithgall will get a 2-minute response, and Mayor Gray will have the opportunity for a 1-minute rebuttal. The questions will alternate between each candidate throughout the debate, with the opposing candidate always getting the chance for a rebuttal. In order to stay efficient today, it's very important that the candidates stay within their time frames. 2-minute answers and 1-minute rebuttals. The debate will end with each candidate giving a 2-minute closing statement. Mr. Smithgall will go first with the closing statement. And I hope you guys all enjoy our debate. I know we put a lot of hard work into it. So we'll start with Mayor Gray's opening statement.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I have 3 children. One of the reasons we moved into the city 42 years ago was because of the schools. We wanted our kids to go to school in a place where it would be diverse, diverse economically, ethnically, racially. We wanted our kids to thrive in a place that would really be representative of America. So we chose the city because of the schools. I had 3 kids, as I said. All 3 of them went to Fulton, Reynolds, and McCaskey. All 3 of them graduated from college. One of them has a master's degree right now, runs the cartoon art museum in San Francisco. I say that only because it's important that you as students involve yourself in the day-to-day operations of your government. That's what we're here today to talk about. What our government's all about, what our government does, what our government should do. When I was your age, I was in a similar situation in high school I went to, and I was debating for John Kennedy. I was in 11th grade in front of the student body. There weren't many Democrats where I went to school, so they picked me to debate. I had the opportunity to meet John Kennedy. I have a picture of my office of myself and President Kennedy. I also continued in public life at the state and national level. I was one of the only mayors in Pennsylvania. There were 3 of us who supported Barack Obama in the primary campaign. So my involvement in politics goes back and really is rooted in my school experiences. So today, again, I want to thank Mr. Reese. This is the first time I've been out here. I come out usually once a year and speak with Mr. Reese's classes and Mr. Jimenez for providing this forum. And I ask you really to listen, to evaluate the questions and the answers, and to make up your mind who would be best to lead Lancaster in the future. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm Charlie Smithgall. I was mayor for 8 years, you explained earlier. And believe it or not, I am a McCaskey graduate. I went to McCaskey and graduated in 1963. Back when the law school was still law, and I hope you still call it the law school. The school gave me an education. When I went to I'm a pharmacist, and I went to one of the hardest pharmacy schools in practically the whole world. The Philadelphia College of Pharmacy, which is now called the University of the Sciences of Philadelphia. When I got to Philadelphia, my first year is your roughest year when you get to college. Because of the education I got in McCaskey, I was 1 year ahead of everybody else that was in my class. And I have to thank McCaskey for his training in the My daughter went to McCaskey, she graduated in 63, and she had the exact same experience. She was 1 year ahead. So when you leave here, you're not leaving here empty. McCaskey has given you a lot. Again, I want to thank you for being here. I'm proud of what I've built when I was mayor 8 years ago. Rather than me still I got the record, I'd like to read something from the year. There was an editorial on the left office. It says, Smithgall presided over what many viewed as the largest economic and cultural expansion in 30 years. Falling crime rates, safer neighborhoods, improved streets, booming arts sector, and the downtown revitalization all had Smithgall's imprint. That's what I want to accomplish again, and that's what I hope everybody else that lives in the city is in line with when I'm re-elected as mayor. Thank you.
Thank you both. Now we'll start with the question for Mrs. Smithgall from Jose.
The PA Department of Community and Economic Development issued a report in 2011 that indicated the debt in the city is $221.6 million, which is $3,735.15 for every citizen. Do you think that debt in the city is a problem?
The debt in the city is a very large problem. Every mayor has to have some debt for long-term expansions of things that last 20, 40, 50 years. When you incur a bond, if you borrow $1 million in a bond, it usually costs you about $70,000 a year to pay that million back. So in 20 years, you're paying $1.4 million. The debt load is excessive. I had debt, my debt was for a police station and the water and sewer plants. The current debt is up over $50 million more, I didn't know what it was, more than $50 million than when I was in. And they bought things that on bond money, like Chevy Cobalt cars, that will never last 20 years. In fact, from what I heard, they're talking about replacing them now. So the debt load's too high, it's got to be brought down so that you, as your next generation, doesn't have to pay for it and your children don't have to pay for it.
Well, in answer to your question, no, the debt is not too high. Most of that debt was for $100 million of it was for public water projects that were done in the city. Right now, the water you drink in the city of Lancaster is as good as bottled water. Have you noticed any do not or boil advisories for Lancaster City Water? No. But beyond that, the money that was used in the bonds that were floated were for long-term infrastructure improvements. The figure that you cited is totally misleading. We have about $800 worth of debt per capita in the city that is not self-funded. And I don't want to get into it too much, but self-funded, for example, the water system. That is paid for by the water users, 2/3 of which don't even live in the city. That said, we've been very judicious in our use of bonds. We have the highest rating for any city in Pennsylvania. We have the highest rating for any city in Pennsylvania for fiscal stability and responsibility, higher than any other city, way higher than any of our cities that are close by. So, no, it isn't a problem. It's well taken care of, and the figures are misleading.
Now, Nathan has a question for Mayor Duran.
Okay, Greg. Recent talks in the city has been that the convention center has not been paying their bills, and that some of that is causing our debt. Do you believe that the convention center should face sanctions because of that?
Well, first of all, the convention center has been paying its bills. The problem with the convention center is the financing arrangement that was made in financing. It is doing more business than was projected that it would do. When I got in office, it wasn't going to be a convention center, quite frankly, because the fiscal situation was such that they really couldn't fund it. We got together and worked at it, a way to fund it. Unfortunately, the way the bonds are financed, they did a swap, which I won't get into it because, quite frankly, I'm not sure I understand them. They did a swap which locked them into a higher bond rate. We haven't worked it out, and it's going to be worked out. It's going to be taken care of, probably, hopefully by the end of the year, so that the financing is changed and it won't pose a problem. You know, the convention center is a great success. It's certainly aided in revitalization of downtown. And again, the problem is the manner in which it is financed, which again is resolvable.
Mr. Smithgall, would you like a rebuttal?
Yes. When I was mayor, I was one that proposed the convention center. Everybody on my team thought it was a good idea. In fact, it was proposed. And another McCaskey graduate, Art Morris, the class of 63, many years before mine. It started out as something I was in favor of. It was a much smaller project, probably about $70 million. And the mayor tried grew and blossomed to $200 million. The debt load is hard, it's high, and recently the city has taken on another responsibility through a Commissioner Scott Martin's proposal to take another $5+ million under its wing. When I started the convention center, it was supposed to be a split between private and public. 75% of the money was private, 25% was supposed to be public. Now it's reversed. There's only 25% private money and 75% public money we're responsible for. And it's a problem, and I hope they can get through it and pay it because it's a valuable asset not only to the city but to the county.
Now, Stanley has a question for Mr. Smithgall.
Cities like Baltimore, Philadelphia, and New York all have free transportation. In the coming years, will Lancaster have the same opportunity as well with free transportation?
I didn't catch, it was a public transportation question? Could you repeat the question?
Cities like Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York all have free transportation. In the coming years, will Lancaster have the same opportunity as well with free transportation?
I hope they do. We now have RRTA that anybody runs RRTA pays for it, or serves 65 years old for the handicap or has a free bus fare. I don't know how it works for school kids. Years ago, I had proposed that the county and city was together by 4 parking lots in the southeast and west of town, where the buses could come to pick people up and take them into the jobs so we license and burden and cars inside the city. I don't think Philadelphia has free transportation. They have many different systems of monorail, et cetera. I mean, not monorail, subway system. Thank you.
Quite frankly, I don't know where we're getting money for free transportation. We've been looking into a circulator system in the city. It would basically be smaller buses that would circulate the city. Give you an opportunity that if you live, let's say, on South Pearl Street, you can get downtown or get to the other side of the city with very low or reduced rate. We're looking at it, it's really in the formative stages. We are looking at alternative modes of transportation. I have to remind every now and then that walking is a form of transportation. In a city like Lancaster, we can walk a lot of places, and I do walk a lot of places. In addition, we're working on a bike path right now that would start from the old down the Goat Path, connect up, go behind McCaskey here, go into downtown, go to the other side of the city around F&M, and go out to the health campus. We want to work to encourage people to use bicycles as an alternative form of transportation. Make it safe, make paths for them, provide more bike racks in different areas of the city.
Mayor Gray, we're going to go on to another question.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
I don't see the light up here.
I know. For the rest of the debate, I think this paper is going to be time.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm used to addressing the audience.
I'm at an advantage over here. I can see the timekeeper hiding back behind the curtain. You can't seriously be wondering who
That was hiding behind the curtain. I thought it was just somebody that had my back.
I'm sorry, I guess we had a mix-up with the time cards, but we should move on. And now, Aaron has a question for Mayor Gray.
What makes you a more qualified candidate?
Well, there are a number of things. First of all, my entire life I've been studying American government and public administration. I try to read a book a week, and I read almost nothing but political science, new urbanism, American history. That's been my interest since I was a kid. But in addition, and more importantly, I was a trial lawyer for over 30 years. I started out in legal services as a vista lawyer in Pittsburgh, working in the poorest area of Pittsburgh for $42.50 a week I made at that time. People said, how could you live on it? Well, it was more money than I ever had before. I came back here, and by the time I was 30, I had started Central Pennsylvania Legal Services, which provided, again, legal services for poor people in York, Lancaster, Harrisburg, and Reading. When I was 30, I had 35 lawyers that worked for me in those areas. I went on as an advocate. I was the president of the Pennsylvania Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. Through the practice of law, I've seen the other side of this life. I've seen what people go through and the problems they had. I've also been able to formulate ways, approaches to get them out of problems, to straighten things out, to work things out. And I've been their advocate. That's what I like to be for the city of Lancaster, an advocate. I like to be up front. I like to advocate for us. I like to stand for us and stand for the good and positive things that are in the city. So, again, my background, my advocacy, my abilities, I think mold me well for being mayor of the city of Lancaster.
Mr. Smithgall, would you like to respond?
Yes. What qualifies me for, I think the question is, what qualifies me, why should I be mayor of the city of Lancaster? Well, I was mayor, and one thing I did is I listened to everybody and listened to what they had to say and try to apply their ideas to make Lancaster a better place. Mayor Gray and I both mean well, and this gets to be summed up in a real brief answer. He lectures the people, I listen to people to create the best possible outcome and the results that the people expect.
Now, John has a question for Mr. Smithgall.
The indicative point is important.
Pardon me?
What the indicative point is important.
I didn't get the question.
He asked, what do you think your opponent is doing poorly?
Well, it's going to take more than 2 minutes. Sorry about that. Public safety is a problem right now. We don't have enough police, we don't have enough fire. That has to be solved. We have to get public safety. Once public safety is done, people will reinvest in the city. The second thing is the city finances have to be brought back under control. We need a stable economic background for people to think they want to invest in town, and we need to feel safe about the city before they bring their homes or their businesses.
Well, I think my opponent nervous of facts get in the way of his opinions. That's one of his big problems. The crime rate in Lancaster is half of what it is in New York and Harrisburg. We really have got the city moving forward. He thinks in individual problems. I think in broader policy considerations. Where are we going? What do we want to be in the future? Not what's the immediate problem, but what's the manifestations of a future problem, and how do we begin to address that so that when you all have kids and live in the city of Lancaster, those problems that we could have addressed at that time are addressed. So again, I think strategically, I think broader, I think on policy level, I think former Mayor Smithgall tends to think really on individual potholes rather than talking about developing a plan to improve all our streets.
Mr. Smithgall mentioned something about firemen and police officers, and I think Johnny has a follow-up question regarding law enforcement. Would you like to direct your question to Mayor Gray?
And what do you plan on the changes? What, if any, what changes do you plan on making?
Okay, what changes would I plan on making in law enforcement? First of all, we have 144 police officers in the city of Lancaster. To say if we have more police officers, we'll have less crime, it's just too simplistic. I mean, we could have 200 police officers, and that wouldn't necessarily address a crime problem. What we've done is they developed new strategies for approaching crime, and it's really report-based. They look, are there 3 or 4 robberies occurring in this area? What are they like? Are they the same person? And then they'll concentrate police officers in that area. If you look at the number of police officers we have, we're probably better police than any other city in central Pennsylvania, and certainly equivalently. We have 7 square miles in the city of Lancaster and 60,000 people. If you take it on a per capita basis or a per square mile basis, we have plenty of police. What the police emphasize again is crime mapping. In addition, they emphasize the response time, how long it takes them to get to an important event. They grade it as they come in. We have an excellent response time. The chief really prides himself on the quickness of response for serious offenses. As far as fire is concerned, we have limitations as to funding. We're working with the firefighters union to do the best we can with the money we have and the people we have. I know I have problems with the firefighters union. I know Mayor Smithgall had serious problems with the firefighters union. I know Mayor Stork did, and so did the mayor before. That's an ongoing thing. We're doing our best with the funds that we have to staff as well as we can to make sure that your public safety is protected.
Mr. Smithgall, would you like to rebuttal?
Yes. I believe Mayor Gray just said we have 148 police officers. When I was mayor, we had 178 police officers, and we had neighborhood policing. And I believe the question is how we're going to change the policing. We had neighborhood policing that was paid for with 1 mil of taxes on all property owners. They're still collecting the mill of taxes, but the neighborhood policing is gone. Everything that he just said about crime is reactive fighting with crime. I want to be back to proactive fighting with crime. That means don't let a crime happen. Then we don't have to investigate it and nobody's harmed. He stated earlier that he compared us to New York, Reading, and Harrisburg. I don't want to be compared to that New York, Harrisburg, and Reading. He's decreased the police department by almost 20%. Murders have increased 78.6%. Rapes have increased 6.9%. Robberies 6.2%. And assaults are up 13%. These are numbers I don't want to hear, and we've got to have the police on the street to stop them.
Danielle, do you have a question for Mr. Smithgall?
With several large-scale developments having a hard time securing bonds and private monies, what steps as mayor would you take to speed up the process or stop it from happening?
The question to get the money to do a project?
Yes, that's what she's asking.
Okay, I just summoned it down. Sorry about that. The first thing you do is when you know a project's coming, is it an industrial project or jobs, then you go to the state and federal government for aid. If it's a local project, you see what money's available and go that way. If it's a housing project. There's state aid, there's DFHA grants. If anybody remembers what South Plum Street looked like when I was mayor, it was bad. We tore the whole block down and built homes, and now they're going all over the southeast area. And I think they're ready for it. But what you have to do is go get the money where it's available. And there's one thing I did. I worked with Republicans and Democrats, and I brought a lot of money in Lancaster to foster economic development.
Mayor Gray, would you like to respond?
Yes, my administration, along with Senator Smucker, a Republican, worked closely on passing the community investment and revitalization zone bill. Lancaster will probably, again, because of my administration and Senator Smucker, will be the first city designated to have a cruise. That will produce somewhere, it's estimated, between $50 to $100 million in investment, commercial investment in the city of Lancaster. So, again, pointing out, Mayor Smithgall thinks of an individual project. We're thinking from a broader perspective, how we can get real money into the city of Lancaster for commercial development, and more importantly, to get jobs into the city of Lancaster. That's what we want commercial development for. Not so much as suburbanizing to make money, but it's so that you living in the city of Lancaster can work.
Now, Damien has a question for Mayor Gray.
If elected, how do you plan to help the littering problem and the amount of trash on streets of our city?
Well, we've instituted a single hauler policy. It's been in effect now going on 6 years. The first time I ran for election, I stood up at Reynolds, the corner of Devon and Walnut, and counted 11 garbage trucks along Devon Street while I was there that day. It just seemed like foolishness. It seemed like a total waste of money, jammed up traffic. We went to a single hauler system again because of the court case that made it difficult for us to run the other one. In the single hauler system, we employed 2 sweep officers. Sweep officers are officers that monitor, really, trash, monitor littering, monitor overstuffed couches on porches, which you might not think is a big deal, but is a real fire hazard. They go out and investigate this, cite people, or else provide what they call friendly reminders that you're not doing things. The first year I ran for office, one of the things that was mentioned so many times that I went door to door, and I do a lot of door to door, I enjoy it. So many times, because people would put garbage cans out on the sidewalk and leave them there all week, just take the garbage out, put it in, and then the trash man would come by and pick it up. We instituted the policy that you can't do that. You have to put it out after 5 o'clock the night before it's picked up. We monitor litter, and it almost goes block by block with litter. We monitor litter. There's an actual litter index that they evaluate it on. We're low. We are low. But I think the fact that there is litter around is sort of indicative of a throwaway society. When I was a kid, first of all, you didn't get bottles of water, but if you got a bottle of soda that was in a returnable bottle, there weren't throwaways. Today, everything is throwaway just about, and it creates a real litter problem. Thank you.
Mr. Smithgall, would you like to respond?
Just one response. The first thing is on the, he saw 11 trash haulers. There were 11 people that lived in Lancaster City that were earning an income and took it home to support their families. I was never in favor of the single hauler system because I thought the multiple hauler system worked better. But it's passed now and it's in existence. The litter, we set special patrols out to check litter. We would get people out of the prison to help clean up problem neighborhoods. There's certain neighborhoods that are a problem. And we have people on probation and parole that will clean up like Lancaster's Square and Diggs Park and stuff every day. So we went around and actively cleaned it up, and we had an aggressive street cleaning program to keep litter from piling up on the curbs.
Now, Sophie has a question for Mr. Smithgall.
Do you support the continued funding of Amtrak in Lancaster?
Well, Amtrak is a very important part to give people jobs that live in Lancaster. I support it, and Amtrak remodernization that started under my watch, and it's been 16 years and it's still not done. And the way Amtrak moves, I don't know if it'll ever get done. Amtrak needs to be supported. A lot of people, we're the number 3 station in the Northeast for people coming and going out of the Amtrak station for jobs in Harrisburg and jobs in Philly. When I was mayor, they put the high-speed line in, and when it eventually gets done, you'll be able to be in downtown Philly in 45 minutes, which is not an unusual long amount of time. So it's going to create jobs, it's going to open it up, and it's going to open up Lancaster for people that are tired of living in Philly to come out to our wonderful city of Lancaster and live here. One flaw with it right now is Amtrak got to figure out how to get parking. They've got an idea to put it over to Van Township, which is where they're going. But Amtrak is a necessity in this modern world because it saves one heck of a lot of fuel and fossil fuels when they need it.
Mayor Gray, would you like to respond?
Yes, I'm very supportive of alternative forms of transportation other than cars. Quite frankly, the day of cars is coming and going. There has to be other ways of getting around. I take Amtrak on a regular basis to Philly. I go down to Eagles games. I take Amtrak down to meetings in Harrisburg. We take Amtrak. On the other hand, Amtrak is so slow to move. I was at a meeting one day where PennDOT described Amtrak as being slow, and I stopped the meeting. And I said, "Did you hear who described somebody as slow? I mean, if Amtrak PennDOT describes you as slow, you're moving at less than glacier speed, really, because PennDOT's about as slow as you're going to get." But I'm very supportive of Amtrak. I'm very supportive of development around the train station, and we're working to do that.
Now, a question for Mayor Gray from Gazal.
As human beings, we make all mistakes. And I'm sure we have to. What are some mistakes that you would go back and fix?
Well, I like to look forward, and I used to tell younger lawyers that I train, especially as trial lawyers, If you do it once, it's a mistake. If you do it twice, it's a habit. If you do it 3 times, it's a bad habit. So, as things have gone on, I've made mistakes. I've looked at things in different ways in my personal life. I tell people the 4 best things I've ever done in life: get married, have kids, quit drinking, and ride a motorcycle. Those are not necessarily in that order, of course. But in government, one of the biggest mistakes I made coming in was the failure to recognize how limited the authority of local government is and how dependent we are on the state for anything in the way of authority to move forward. When we got into office, we developed a strategic plan, which was the first one the city had. And I don't know, it might be the first one the city ever had, an actual strategic plan where we were going to go, what we were going to concentrate on. We were too ambitious. We thought we could do far more than we had the ability and the authority to do. And we pulled back a little bit as reality hit as to what we can actually accomplish. So, that was a mistake. Failure to recognize the limited authority the city has. As to individual mistakes, I make a mistake a week and look at it, think back, and correct it. Again, as I usually tell younger lawyers, you make a mistake, acknowledge it, recognize it, move to correct it, and don't do it again.
Mr. Smithgall, would you like to respond?
Mistakes are something that everybody makes. That's why they put erasers on pencils. You have to correct them as soon as they're made, and you have to correct them with a sincere attitude towards the correction. I don't know what else to say. Like everybody makes a mistake, and they've got to be fixed. And if apologies are necessary, apologies have to be granted.
Now, Junior has a question for Mr. Smithgall.
If you become mayor, how do you contribute to the prevention of poverty in the city?
Prevention of
Poverty.
poverty. Well, the first thing to stop poverty is to get jobs into the city for people that city people can work at. The highest unemployment rate in Lancaster County is in Lancaster City. The number used to be 72% of all unemployed in Lancaster County lived in Lancaster City. We've got to bring jobs into the city or have the people that live in the city get to their jobs. The first week after the election, when I was elected 16 years ago, they came to me with a plan that they wanted to build a bus terminal downtown. I would not sign the paperwork until they promised that they would deliver bus service to Greenfield, especially Donnelly and Greenfield, during the night. It was never done. They did it on a 6-month basis. Donnelly's a good employer. They need employees. We got them to the jobs. I'd like RRTA to go to other areas so we can get people out. When the convention center was built, we insisted that they try on qualified people to hire from the city first. In fact, we even had a program through McCaskey where people would learn the hospitality industry at the Brunswick Hotel to learn how to cook, clean, make beds and stuff like that. We made jobs available, training available, so people can move forward. That's the best way you can end poverty, is give them a handout, not a handout.
Mayor Gray, would you like to respond?
Well, there's 2 things. One, again, for 7 years I've practiced law representing poor people, primarily suing the federal government in class actions representing poor people. If you look at the homeless population in the city, the majority of the people that are homeless in the city do not come from the city. If you're homeless in Peckland, where are you going to go? You're going to come to the city. And I've worked to try to get the county to recognize this is a county-wide problem. It's not a city problem. It's where the people end up. But to resolve the problem, we need help from other communities. That one. 2, I strongly support SACA, Spanish American Civic Associations, Tech Central, which will be right in the city, will be training people for jobs. In addition, we've recently made an agreement with Stevens College to allow them to build a new campus in the southeast area of the city, which will also provide necessary training for jobs.
Now a question for Mayor Gray from Tanisha. do you feel about crooked police officers, and what would you do to crack down on them?
How do I feel about crooked police officers? How would anybody feel about crooked police officers? Quite frankly, I don't think we have police officers that are crooked. I told the police officers, as a criminal defense attorney, I saw the good, bad, the ugly in police officers. I mean, I don't look at police officers through any rose-colored glasses. I know what police officers do. I know when they do it right. I know when they do it wrong. I know when they violate people's rights. I know when they don't. And I told them, I'll be the first mayor that doesn't have to ride around in a squad car some night to see what your job is. I know what your job is. I know what you do. Our current chief of police, Chief Sadler, 27 years with the Philadelphia Police Department. African American, was head of the forensic division, head of the narcotics division, head of the patrol division. He had 4,000 officers that reported to him. Head of the detective division, he had 800 officers report to him in the detective division. He runs a pretty tight ship, quite frankly. He works with police officers. Attitude of the police officers on the street starts at the top. Starts at the top and goes down. So, you know, how will we deal with crooked police officers? We won't tolerate it, quite frankly. It's not acceptable. Police officers aren't above the law. Police officers are above the law.
Mr. Smithgall, would you like to respond?
Yes. When I was mayor, we had a complaint process. You got to watch out. A lot of people, if they feel that a police officer has wronged them, if you go to another police officer, they cure that blue line. I had a police officer who was a lieutenant that heard the complaints, but I had a minister that was a private layperson that heard the complaints. Most of the complaints went to him. In any situation, there's three sides to the story. It's your side, the police side, and probably someplace in the middle is what happened. The minister that I had would take the reports in writing, investigate, go check with everybody that was involved, find out which side of the story is correct. Once they got that correction, then a report was issued, and sometimes it led to termination or suspension and attitude adjustment. I don't know if that answers your question. Thank you.
Now Reggie has a question for Mr. Smithgall.
What can you do to make the city of Lancaster more environmentally friendly?
More what friendly?
Environmentally.
Well, first of all, decrease for the environment. Probably the biggest pollution as far as trucks and buses. I tried to get the trucks out of downtown, especially the big ones. One of the things is somehow we have, maybe one of you people can invent a new GPS system that doesn't bring trucks through town and try to get a 53-foot truck and a conventional trailer to drive on Marietta Avenue. It's not going to work, especially with the tight turns. We got to look for where our rainwater is going. I was on the Chesapeake Bay Commission, just like Mayor Prater, and we watched the stormwater. We instituted with federal grants, removing more phosphates and nitrates from the sewage treatment system, and water has to be better controlled going into the sewage system on heavy downpour.
Mayor Gray, would you like to respond?
Probably most of you don't know, you live in one of the greenest small cities in the United States, and it's because of my administration. Currently, we dump between 750 million and 1 billion gallons of untreated sewage into the Conestoga a year. Billion gallons of untreated sewage. Our system cannot handle it when it rains. Our solution is green infrastructure. And what we've done, if any of you have been to the parks that we've redone, those parks take stormwater out of the stormwater wastewater system. We have more green roofs per capita, per square foot of green roofs in this city than any other city in the United States. Environmentalism is incredibly important. Not for me, I'll be dead before it makes a difference. It's important for you. We're looking at a 10 or 15-year plan to get all our vehicles off of gasoline. Electric or natural gas. There's going to be a natural gas station out on Harrisburg
Now a question for Mayor Gray from Sophia Desir.
What are your capital funding priorities and how should they be paid for?
Well, again, capital funding, do you mean public
Yes.
buildings or do you mean, our capital projects are, first of all, put an annex in the city hall, which is being built. To bring city hall to ADA requirements, American Disability Act requirements, we have an estimate that cost us $4.5 million. So we floated one of the bonds that former Mayor Smithgall was criticizing for, and we had $4.5 million there. Meanwhile, I started to negotiate with the state and got then Governor Randall to agree to match that with another $5 million. Governor Corbett agreed to follow up on Governor Randall's matching, so we could build an actual annex and improve the city hall. City hall right now has no sprinklers, doesn't have any smoke alarms. The engineering department is in the basement, and it's a basement. So what we're going to do is consolidate the people in the city and bring them in. In addition, our parks have been one of our primary things. Sixth Ward Park, Brandon Park, Crystal Park, Rodney Park. We've done the dog park sort of fell in our lap. We've done those, and we will continue to improve our parks as our capital projects. Finally, we're selling our current Parks Division to Stevens Trade, and we're getting enough grants from the state that we'll be able to build pretty much for the amount it would cost us to fix that up, build a new public works where we would be able to get all the public works people in one place and sort of unify the management of it, get far more efficient than we've been in the past. So those are our primary things that we're looking for in the way of public finance.
Mr. Smithgall.
On capital projects, like I said before, I would look at all capital projects, as how long is this going to last? I replaced 5 of the fire department's vehicles with no capital investment. We borrowed the money and they found the budget in your fire department budget to pay for these things over a 5-year period with no capital investment. Big capital investment is only used for things that are going to last 20, 30, or 40 years, not things that last in the short run. When people would come to me with a project and they'd say, we're going to do whatever for $3 million, I'd look at them and say, okay, where's $210,000 coming from for the next 20 years to pay for it? If they couldn't come up with a good, adequate answer that would take services away from the core services of the city, the project wasn't done or figured out how to pay for it.
Now Brian has a question for Mr. Smithgall.
If elected, what can you promise to the youth of Lancaster City?
I didn't hear, I'm sorry.
If elected, what can you promise to the youth of Lancaster City?
Opportunity. The promise to me, to anybody that's younger, is the opportunity to live here as cheaply as possible, get a job, move forward, and listen to the youth of the city to find out what they want to accomplish or things that they want to do or see happen in the city. You guys are our future, all of you. You are our future, and you must be supported.
Mayor Gray.
I promise you a future in the city of Lancaster. We're working on housing, we're working on our infrastructure, we're working on environmental issues, but even more so, we're working on Lancaster being a fun place to live. And it's neat right now. If you go to other cities that are comparable size in Pennsylvania, you'll realize how good we have in Lancaster right now. And there's things happening, we're encouraging more things to happen in the arts. I don't just mean painting, I mean bands, I mean music, I mean venues in Lancaster. So as you grow, you won't feel the need to go to New York, go to Philly or Baltimore to get some of these things. They'll be available here too in the city of Lancaster.
Now Ashley has a question for Mayor Gray.
Do you plan to raise taxes?
Nobody ever plans to raise taxes. No, we've had budget surpluses in the last 2 years. And I don't see any need at this point to raise additional taxes. On the other hand, we came through one of the worst economic crises that Pennsylvania ever had. For example, former Mayor Smithgall says, well, we had all these policemen. Oh, you have all 10 of them patrol Lancaster Township. We don't patrol Lancaster Township anymore. The other half dozen on long-term disability. We brought them out. They weren't being policemen. They were just being paid as policemen. So, you know, we've taken things and worked on them to try to be as efficient, effective, and productive. I'll give you another example. Mayor Smithgall didn't raise taxes in 2004 with bonds law. Well, he got $700,000. In 2011, that cost us $4 million. $4 million. So, you know, talk is cheap, and making promises, we're going to have all these people, we're going to have additional people, we have to do this, we have to do that. Doing it is expensive. And, you know, would I like to drive a Mercedes? Yeah, but I drive a Toyota instead, Prius. So, you know, wishing things doesn't make them happen. We're trying to be as effective as we can with the money we have.
Mr. Smithgall?
In the last 8 years, the Gray administration has raised taxes 6 times for a total of 59.6%. That's almost 60%. I looked at the budget in 2005. If you look it up, I mean, go to your computer and look it up. The auditor statement says that the city had $19.2 million cash on hand that could be spent. In the 2012 audit, which was put out in August, if you endure it long enough, it's 116 pages long. You'll see cash on hand right now is $3.12 million. He's increased spending $9.6 million or 24%. And to pay for that, he's over $8 million or 72% of the surplus away. I cannot see how he can say there's going to be no tax increase. Taxes, unfortunately, are a necessity of government. But taxes are your money, and they should be spent properly. I never liked tax increases. The major tax increase I did was for community policing. He's still
We're going to have to move on to the next question.
$1 tax increase.
Sorry. Now we have a question for Mr. Smithgall from Louisville.
If you become mayor, is there any policy that you have planned that will affect the future of Lancaster?
Positive plans to affect the future of Lancaster.
Do you have a plan that will affect the future of Lancaster?
The plan is to do everything and anything you can do to accomplish goals of the city of Lancaster. The accomplishments I had was the baseball park, convention center, kids park, the new water system, which is the state of the art right now. Very good. It's clean water, it's safe water. And I can do the first Fridays and the art district were things that came under my spot. Plans are what we evolve on. I listen to people, we have committees. The plans are wide open for the city. There's a lot of spaces to increase the opportunity grant from Senator Smucker to bring money in, and it's bond money that the city's, I guess, ultimately responsible for the bill. But to build new businesses and create jobs and opportunities for everyone.
Mayor Gray?
Well, I'll combine the last two of Mr. Smithgall's statements. First of all, he's dead wrong. Stop over and I'll show you how to read the balance sheet. We have $12 million in reserves. His last budget that was proposed when I took office is a $7 million deficit. You know, in response to the question, would you raise taxes? I'll point out to you that Mayor Smithgall said, I can't see how we aren't going to raise taxes. I'm willing to say right now, at least in the next year, they're not going to raise taxes. He's just told me he's going to.
Brittany now has a question for Mayor Gray.
How does the city support and or promote youth employment?
How does the city support
Youth employment.
youth employment? Well, you know, the city employs around 600 people. Very few jobs are in the city, for the city. Most people who work for the city like to work for the city. Most people who work for the city are good employees and do a good job. You know, how can we encourage other employment for youth? Again, Tech Central, which will train people for jobs that are available right now, that Socket is working on to be open in the near future. We work with them from the beginning. Stevens College, the expansion of their campus will train people for new jobs. Couple that with, again, my administration getting the CRIZ, which again should bring $50 to $100 million in commercial investment. It will be an opportunity for employers to come into the city, but even more important, to have a trained workforce ready and available to them. Very often, when we're talking economic development, some business that wants to move in, one of their early questions is, can you provide workers to us? And especially if it's in skilled positions, say printing, machine maintenance, something along those lines, welding. Not everybody wants to go to college. Not everybody should go to college. There are plenty of great careers out there and opportunities out there for people. We want to make sure that the training's available, and not only that, the training for jobs that we're going to look for in the city.
Mrs. Smithgall?
One of the things we did when I was mayor was we hired high school and college students to work in the public works department, particularly in the parks. I would encourage anybody else that's an employer to hire students. I understand a lot of students here work in the fast food industry and that's one of their land. The more opportunities you have, seasonal, the ballparks one where I think a lot of students are hired and work out. You have to have the opportunities available for the students to get the job. And the city has to be one that's leading in charge to hire students to work on different projects.
Now Emily has a question for Mr. Smithgall.
How do you feel about mandatory background checks on all gun purchases and bans on military style assault?
Mandatory background checks right now do exist. Any new firearm purchase has to go through a licensed dealer, and there's a federal form that has to be filled out, there's a handgun, there's a state form that has to be filled out. And the driver's license number is called into the instant check system, which runs your number, name, and everything else through the system. Within minutes, you are membered. Now, one of the fallacies of the whole system is mental health records are not absolutely put into the system. The only mental health records that are put into the system that would deny somebody a gun are involuntary commitments to mental institutions by the court system. This has got to be cleaned up, and if mental health was properly reported, the Washington Navy Yard shooting would never happen a couple weeks ago. The second part of the question is, do I take military assault style weapons? If you're talking about the AR-15, they're semi-automatic. Most states, except Pennsylvania, allow them for hunting, and I see no problem.
Mayor Gray?
Well, first of all, there aren't mandatory background checks for all guns. Small rifles in Pennsylvania, between private sellers, there's no background check. In addition, you know, on the federal level, you can be on the watch list and not allowed to fly on the airplane because you might be a terrorist and pass the background check. It's full of holes. As chairman of the Pennsylvania Association of Mayors Against Illegal Guns, I know over 200 other mayors in Pennsylvania saying that for our own safety, our own public safety, we have to start with a reasonable gun regulation. It's as easy as that. We cannot continue to allow people to get firearms that pose a danger to us by them having them. I have friends that hunt. I'm a big fan of venison. People would shoot, need guns and guns for self-protection, and no problem at all. But we have far too many jerks out there with guns, and we've got to start taking it seriously.
Now Hannah has a question for Mayor Gray.
What can be done to promote homeownership?
Homeownership. Well, it's interesting, some of the more recent, at the risk of saying an election, some of the more recent new urban stuff says that your generation won't be as interested in homeownership as my generation. My generation, you got up, you got married, you bought a house, and that's just the way it was. Your generations, the stuff that we're reading, you'll be more likely to change jobs and locations, you'll move around more, you'll do things differently than older generations. That said, we have programs in place to encourage homeownership. Right now, threatened by Congress, we have a program in place that does critical repair that we fund through federal money. That if somebody owns a home and the roof is leaking, and the heating system is broken down in the winter, and they're lower moderate income, we can go in and loan them money or give them money to make those critical repairs. That's being threatened right now. That's being threatened, though, not this year, unless Congress gets its act together. They're real, where the rubber hits the road kind of problems that happen, that we see on a daily basis. The federal government's dysfunction right now. It's causing us real problems. So, again, we have homeowner programs. We encourage purchase of homes. We now inspect homes when they're being sold and make sure that they comply with code conditions. We want to do everything we can to encourage people who want a home to buy a home. And Lancaster is the perfect place to buy a home. You can get more home in the city of Lancaster at a better price than any place else in Lancaster.
Mr. Smithgall?
First of all, the critical repair program started under my watch. We started to help people to stay in their home. With the increased homeownership, I just thought of this program called Homestead Lancaster, where the abandoned, the condemned, and other houses would be taken over by the city of Lancaster, then offered to a first-time home buyer. And the home buyer would then repair them with their own sweat equity, develop them into a home, and if they lived there 10 years, they kept all the profit that they sold them. They were sold before 10 years, and they were sales property to the city. The second part of that would be homes that are in just too bad a shape. Over in Filbert Street, there was one in the front, the whole front of the house fell off. It was bought by a qualified developer. He's fixing it up. I passed it yesterday. It looks like it's almost done, and it was sold for a very affordable price. We also took South Plum Street and I forget Civic Avenue and everything else, and tore down houses and created cheap, inexpensive homes for people to live in.
Thank you. Now Josh has a question for Mr. Smithgall.
What's the plan for the current federal government shutdown?
What do I think of the federal government shutdown?
What's the plan for the current federal?
Everybody's complaining about it. I cannot understand why they do things like this. It's fighting back and forth and accomplishing no goals. I wish people would get along. I always got along with everybody. To me, politics meant nothing. I don't care if it's Republican or Democrat. It's for the good of everybody to solve the problem.
Mayor Gray?
Well, I agree. It's everybody. It's everybody with the Republican portion of the House of Representatives who wants to use the budget and financing of the federal government to get rid of a law that they don't agree with because they can't get a majority of Congress to repeal that law. And they can't get it passed under President Obama's veto. So for the first time, they're using the federal government employees as a form of blackmail because they don't like Obamacare. It's outrageous. It hasn't been done before. They should be ashamed of themselves.
Now Gonzalez has a question for Mayor Gray.
What is your favorite part of being a mayor, and what do you enjoy about it? We know that you have other jobs, but specifically being a mayor, what do you enjoy?
Well, I've had other, that's for sure. The question is, what do I enjoy the most about being mayor? I really like people. I do like people. And just as I was reading here, many of you students, we started here, it gives you an opportunity to meet people. I walk a lot, and I kiddingly tell people it takes me 20 minutes to walk a block, which sometimes is an exaggeration, sometimes would be lightning speed, because I'm stopped. I'm stopped on a regular basis because people want to talk to me about this or that. They want to talk about a problem in their neighborhood, suggesting what they think can be done. Or they just want to talk about what's going on. Or they might want to talk about the Eagles or the Sixers. I enjoy meeting people. I enjoy talking to people. I thrive on it. And that part of the job I really like. Not all those meetings are pleasant. People think they can say things to you because you're the mayor. But, you know, that sort of goes with the character. You have to have thick skin. I enjoy people. I enjoy meeting people, talking to people.
Mr. Smithgall?
Well, 16 years ago, I got elected to be mayor, and I met with Mayor Stewart. She told me, this is an exact quote, "This is the worst job you'll ever have in your life. I'm a pharmacist, and mayor was the best job I ever had in my life. I had fun with the city. I learned everybody's culture. I got to meet things. I went into neighborhoods, talked to people, had fun, learned all the ethnic foods that you can possibly imagine, and I love them all. The thing I like the most and the most enjoyable thing is meeting people, talking to people, and solving their problems."
Now a question for Mr. Smithgall from Tanika.
What plans do you have to make Lancaster a safer city?
Make Lancaster a safer city. We need more police, we need more fire, and we have to be proactive to fight crime. We do not have enough of either one of them. On February the 13th, 2 people died in a fire on Madison Street. Firemen got there a little bit late. 2 firemen went in. Mayor Gray had a report written on the letter, and he called it they were freelancing. And he hid behind the fact that he cut the firemen and he cut the budget, and this is something that came home. July 4th weekend, 9 people were killed on a fire on Clay Street. We've got to instill more police, more fire to keep the city and you safer.
Mayor Gray?
First of all, I take that as an insult that you would blame me or the fire department for those deaths. People have died prior to fire, people getting there. That's pretty low, quite frankly. In addition, listen to what Mayor Smithgall said. We need more policemen, more firemen. Mayor Gray raised taxes. I won't raise taxes. Well, let me tell you, welcome to the real world. You want more policemen, more firefighters, you better be ready to pay a lot more. Not only that, it's incredibly simplistic to say if we have 150 police officers, we're going to be any safer than if we have 140. Yet that 6 police officers will cost us well over $500,000 a year. So, you know, again, talk is cheap.
Now a question for Mayor Gray from Cynthia Castellanos.
Earlier there was a mention of jobs for teens, and you said things about programs. What sort of programs will be developed to help keep teens proactive and off the streets?
Well, again, we continue to employ teens in the summer, but those are sort of bank work jobs, mowing lawns and that type of thing with our parks department. The idea is to provide technical training. You can go out, you can market. I'll give you an example. Stevens College, over 90% of people graduated into jobs. many getting $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year to start. Because that kind of person is in demand, that kind of training is in demand. Skills in the trade, we tend in the United States to look down on it. We shouldn't, because, you know, nobody's going to outsource a mason to fix my brick wall. It's not going to, they're not going to move the job to India. It's going to have to be somebody that's here. So, again, training, I think, is the number one thing, that we have a skilled workforce. Number two is we attract the investment, we attract the businesses. We want to use that skilled workforce. And we work to try to match the two. We work that if a company wants to come, let's say Don wants to open a new plant, we work to make sure that people that are trained in print are there available for Don. So the two go hand in glove. One is the economic development, two is the training and youth so that they can take their jobs and find it out.
Mr. Smithgall?
One of the things, I think it was a two-part question, is what we do with youth jobs. Youth jobs is to create opportunities for all the youth to get a job. First of all, I want to know that. Second part, I think the question was, if you answered it, the second part was, how do we keep kids off the street? We used to have a very active voice program, another program. There's one, I don't want, there should be interest in doing school and things. And the big thing is, go to the library, they've got a teen center.
Now, Thea has a question for Mrs. Smithgall.
There are many things that can be recycled, but the city of Lancaster doesn't include this program. How, if at all, would you expand our recycling capabilities?
And first of all, when recycling, you got to create a demand for all the products that are being recycled. Years ago, nobody would take old milk bottles and that stuff. It's starting to turn around. The only thing they do is like fence posts and things like that. Everything can have a new use. The best example is World War II. You never threw a thing away in World War II, including the bacon fat. That went into the food to make things for the government. Everything's got to be looked at, and you've got to find the sources where to take them.
Mayor Gray?
I'm not sure what is completely recycled, can be recycled. So yes, we've instituted a great recycling program. Prior to the single hauler, which Mayor Smithgall would like to go back to multi-haulers, we followed trucks around and they would throw the recycling into the garbage. Now we have a recycling center out on the New Holland Pike. Plus we've gone to single source, which means you can put the newspaper, you can do business owners, magazines, plastic bottles, glass bottles, cans, put it all in one recycling bin, and it will all be recycled. About the only thing, cardboard, about the only thing I think we don't recycle right now is styrofoam. And I know Beth, when I talked with the mayor about that, they were trying to recycle styrofoam, but it's so light, so difficult to do. We have a great recycling program. Check it out in the Holland and Pike, the recycling center you can pull in there. But also now with your curbside recycling, you can put it on your rendering and we sent a brochure around recently to everybody. Single system recycling.
Now, our last question of the day will be from Daniel.
In regards to school safety, if elected, what are your plans to prevent incidents such as school shootings?
It's yours.
Okay. How do you prevent school shootings? Well, first of all, you have to get the police involved. When Vicki Phillips was made superintendent of schools, I went to her and said, our police are not allowed to be in schools, even on off hours. We instituted a training program where they walk through the halls and in the summertime or in the evenings to learn the feel of the school in case something happened. Now there's new training procedures where people are taught if something's going wrong, they're sent out of the school in a safe manner or locked into a safe area. This is a police matter and the school has to work with it. I believe all the schools out here probably have school resource officers in them. I'm not sure about the elementary school, but I think your high schools have it. And they should be your key person. lockdown area where you come into McCaskey or this building, where you have to go and show who you are, have to be made more secure, and they have to have better warning for the whole school district. I don't know what else to say. It's a very tough subject to discuss, but it has to be accomplished. And like you do a fire drill, there has to be some kind of a shooting or ugly incident drill done. You know what to do when it has to be done.
Mayor, I think it was actually your turn, so your response will be 2 minutes.
I was the same as Mr. Smithgall. I wasn't sure who went next. We're a strong supporter of the school resource officers. I meet at least once a month with Superintendent Rivera. We just sit down and have coffee and talk about how we can cooperate, how the city can work with the school district to make our schools even better and safer, and how the school district can work with the city to train a productive workforce and educate our youth. We're a strong supporter of that. The school district assists us in funding the school resource officers. That said, you know, so often when there are these mass shootings, people say, oh, nothing like that ever happens around here. And what they're saying is it should be in the city that happens. The way, oh, that doesn't happen here. Yeah, well, where does it happen? But think about it. Think about these shootings, these school shootings, these mass shootings. Aurora, nickel mines, Sandy Hook, someplace in rural Arkansas. Most of those are rural problems, rural or suburban. They aren't urban problems. Generally, we don't have that kind of problem, but we do have the individual jerk with a gun, with a weapon. We've got to maintain our vigilance against that kind of thing. I said as mayors against illegal guns. We have to push to work against that and make sure only those who have positive intentions about firearms get access to them. And in the meantime, the school resource officer, I don't look at the guy as patrolling the school. It's not like you need a cop in the school. I look at it as a resource officer, a place you can go, and people do provide information to them that keeps an incident from happening, lets them know what's going on, and give you an opportunity to be a police officer on a different basis. It's not the guy pulling you over for doing a California stop at a stop sign. It's an actual person.
At this time, we'll begin the closing statement portion of the debate. And I believe Mr. Smithgall is going first, so you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody that has come here today, and especially I think it's a history place that came over the Lord Cloister. 16 years ago, I did at McCaskey. It was the best one I had. You guys laid out the questions, and you covered the basis of possibly covered. I want to thank the audience for coming. I went to McCaskey. I lived in the city 68 years now. I lived on Lemon Street. I was born and raised at 549. Got married and moved at 534. My daughter was born at 534. She got married with 2 sons. She lives at 549. I haven't gone far. I love the city of Lancaster, and I want to make it the best city that it could possibly be. We did it before, and now it's time for us to get back at it and do it again. And I hope someday, I hope to live long enough to see one or more of your students up here in this position running for mayor. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for coming. You were a great audience. Thank you to the 2 candidates for coming out to debate here today. Thank you to Mr. Reese, along with Mr. Kunin, Mr. Payne, and the Student Senate advisors. And make sure to keep your eyes out for the Student Citizens in Action Project. This is just the first of many things we're planning to do this year. So I hope you'll stay involved and stay informed like we're trying to do. Thank you.
That was a great event. We appreciate the students. Let me have your attention, please. So we appreciate your patience and your diligence in listening to all the issues from both the mayoral candidates. So we have some housekeeping things to wrap up. First, we want to thank Mayor Gray, Mr. Smithgall for coming. We have a round of applause for them to take out. And his activism in bringing lectures to the campus, Mr. Coonan and student government, a great panel with some great questions. Our students are face of our families, Superintendent Rivera.